Can you play loud but have a harder time making sounds at a quieter level? Or are you like me when I was younger, playing softly so that no one can hear my mistakes, but when I try to play loud, it's difficult or uncomfortable? Well, stick around for some tips that might help you out. First things first, when playing the flute at any volume, you want to strive to play with a clear, focused tone with no fuzz around the edges. Second, try to play with an in-tune sound, not just with others, but with yourself. So, first way to make sure you're playing in tune is to take your flute, use your tuning rod, and check that the little notch is halfway between the edges of the tone hole when you look through this like embouchure plate. That can help you make sure that your flute's in tune, as well as keeping up with any necessary maintenance, avoiding leaks in your instrument, in the keys, leaks in the keys. And once you play with a good tone and with an in-tune sound, we're ready to start talking about dynamics, the wonderful world of louds and softs. So with dynamics, it's talking about volume changes, loud and soft. So when I think about that word volume, it kind of takes me to science, and I think about the volume of air that's coming into my body, going into the flute. So with a loud volume or a high volume, like our fortes and our fortissimos, we are going to use more air, a higher volume of air. And with our quiet dynamics, our quiet volumes, piano, pianissimo, we're going to use a smaller volume of air, but, and this is a very big but, it must have lots of speed and support from our core, from our abdomen, in order to keep that tone quality and that intonation on those quiet dynamics. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about what it means to play loud. What does it look like? So playing loud, using more air, it means that your aperture, the opening between your lips, is going to get larger, and you're going to be making sure you're still keeping the airstream focused and aimed downward so that the tone quality and the airstream don't spread. So here's an example of playing a note with a larger aperture and a strong airstream. And when you're playing loudly, you need to be mindful of pitch, because it can tend to go up. So when the pitch goes sharp, make sure you're counter-correcting if you need to by rolling in or looking down. And that's pretty much a lot of my big pointers for playing loudly. Now let's talk about playing softly. So when you're playing softer, yes, you are going to use a smaller volume of air, less air, but it does need to go fast. So if you're using less air, but you need it to move quickly, then we need to change the size of our aperture to be smaller, very small. So like a laser beam of air. So practice keeping that tone focused and not thin, activating your core muscles, your abdomen to support the airstream. So here's that F again, and I'm going to bring it from the forte to the piano. And make sure I'm having lots of air support from the abdomen so that the sound doesn't drop out, so that that tone doesn't drop out and it goes into like whisper mode. Next, I'd like to give you some practice exercises to help you put this into your daily practice. So first, you need to know what your strength is and what your weakness is so that you can work on that weakness and bolster it up. So if you're not sure, you can ask your neighbor in your band class or your band director or your private teacher. And another tip I'd like to give you while you're working on dynamics is to record yourself doing these exercises, because whenever you're just listening to yourself in your own little bubble, it tends to sound more exaggerated than it really is. So I highly suggest recording yourself from like that third person perspective, so you can kind of hear what your audience is getting. You can hear what you sound like outside of your bubble. because you need to be very exaggerated with dynamics for it to come across to your audience. So let's go ahead and dig into some practice exercises. Practice exercise number 1, the pressure test. So this means you are going to ease into playing a note, finding that threshold of air speed to make it truly speak, to break out of that whisper and into solid tone. I'm going to go on an F. So I started from that whisper, and my aperture was a little bit more large, and I eased it towards being smaller, more pinpoint sized, and was able to get the note to come out. And then I sustained it there for a bit, and I tried to see if I could pull it down, but it kind of fell out again. It fell back into the whisper. Practice exercise 2. Focus on gradual but wide crescendos and decrescendos. Let's consider it a whole note of coming up from our very quietest point, that threshold of pitch, and then going to the loudest you can play without it sounding nasty and without it overshooting to a different note completely, and then bring it back down to that point where it's almost about to drop to a whisper. So starting here, whole note to here, whole note to here. And maybe about 60 beats per minute. On the F again. Ready. Practice exercise number 3, playing scales or 5-note scales at one dynamic level at a time, starting at mezzo forte and easing up to forte and fortissimo, and then starting at mezzo piano and easing down into piano and pianissimo. I'll play a 5-note scale in B flat major. Mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo, mezzo piano, piano, pianissimo. Practice exercise 4, the Baroque approach. So in Baroque music, there's frequently repeated sections, and it's traditional to not play the repeated section the same both times. Frequently that can look like dynamic differences. So that means either playing it forte the first time and then piano the second time, like an echo, or vice versa. So here is an example of some music using the Baroque approach. So that little repeated figure, I played it strongly the first time and I tried to back off when it came back. Thanks for joining me in this mini lesson on dynamics. I hope these tips can help you as you learn to play the flute on a whole new level. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to see in future videos. Bye-bye.